just as Peneleus hacked his neck below the ear and the blade sank clean through, nothing held but a flap of skin. The head swung loose to the side as Lycaon slumped down to the ground. Whoa. The Iliad by Homer. I was very scared to start this book because I thought it would be too difficult, because I thought I wouldn't understand the word, but this was so much more readable than I thought it would be. And it was also much more brutal than I thought it would be. So the main reason why I wanted to read the Iliad is because, first of all, it's a classic. Second of all, many authors in classic literature books refer to this work, and I was very excited to finally read it. Also, up until this day, it is still a very important piece of literature. First of all, let's talk about the Trojan War. So I did some research, I took some notes, and the Trojan War would have taken place in the late Bronze Age. We don't really know if the Trojan War was something that actually took place because there isn't proof. Up until today, there is still much discussion about it. Homer's epics have so much fiction in them that it is hard to say whether or not things have actually happened. Now let's talk about the poem, and it is a very heavy poem because it's a big book. It made me a bit nervous to start because, you know, look at how big it is. And I was also a bit reluctant to start because it is a poem, and I am not really good with poetry. I have tried to read poets and I always fail to understand them. So you probably understand why I was a bit worried to get started. The poem starts in the middle of the Trojan War and you get thrown right into the story without any backstory. It is not about the Trojan War, it is actually a story set at the end of the Trojan War. This poem is just part of a huge story and it mainly focuses on the conflict between Prince Hector of Troy and the Greek hero Achilles. The gods who are up above, they decide everything and the characters are their puppets. There goes much attention to honor, heroism, fate, the gods' influence and the cost of war. Achilles seems to be the most important character here, and the thing is that he is raging and spending the entire poem being angry. Until the end actually, but I'm not gonna say anything about that because spoilers. So what did I think of this? First of all, I think this translation by Robert Fagle was phenomenal. It was really good. Very readable, very accessible. Secondly, I must say I was really surprised by how readable it was, because like I said in the beginning of this video, I was scared and a bit reluctant to get started, but if you're like me and you're like, I don't know if I'll be smart enough to understand, just give it a go because you will. If I can understand, then you can too. There are many characters, but a friend of mine who has read it, he said, do not focus too much on keeping track of all the characters, just let it come to you. I did, and I'm glad I did because there are way too many characters to keep track of. And yeah, I was especially surprised how bloody things were. If I can give you one important tip, if you want to keep track of characters, then keep track of the most important one, which are Agamemnon, Achilles, Hector, Priam, Patroclus, Helen, and Paris. Don't try to remember all the names, just really keep track of the most important ones. I must admit that I do feel a little bit disappointed about the fact that it felt so repetitive. There was a lot of blood spilling, a lot of fighting, and you know, after reading half the poem, you kind of had enough. But I am glad that I've read it, that I finished it, and I would definitely recommend reading it if you haven't yet. Don't feel too intimidated and just give it a go. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next week.